Hi, and thanks for joining me. I hope you, your friends and families are keeping safe and well in these continuing difficult times. As you probably know, England is again in full lockdown. I say full, the schools and universities are still open, but apart from that, it's pretty much as it was earlier in the year in March. Anyway, I'm not going to talk to you about that today. I wanted to talk to you about batteries. I think it's fair to say that I've had problems with my batteries since I bought the boat. Well, 2 weeks ago, on the 15th of October, I don't know why I'm being so specific, but I had new batteries installed. And a couple of days later, I went away. So I've not had the opportunity to get out on the cut and test them. I could test them in the marina just by disconnecting the shore power, but I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to come out, have a cruise, and see how they performed overnight. Anyway, I did record a piece to camera a week after the batteries were installed, and this tells you my thoughts on batteries and why I've chosen the batteries that I have done. So I think it's best to let you see that first and then I'll let you know how I'm getting on with my new batteries. My problem has been that when I finish cruising, my batteries are below 11.5 by early evening, and very often around the 10.5 at the end of the night. So what I do to avoid that is I run the engine. Every hour or so I run it for about half an hour, or perhaps every hour and a half, something of that nature. But I'm running the engine periodically to overcome this problem. New batteries should really be the solution. A lot of you have been asking what I've done about the batteries. So I think it would be a good idea to have a recap as to what was on the boat when I bought it nearly 3 years ago. In the engine bay there were 2 Lion batteries, and in the cabin underneath one of the dinette seats there were 2 Hankook batteries. So the Lion batteries were new. They were fitted in by the marina at the time I bought the boat. The Hankook batteries looked new because they were in a very clean environment, but none of the batteries were marked with the age they were installed. But I do know the 2 Lion batteries were new. Now, I'm not very technical, as I've said on many occasions. Science was my worst subject at school, and I don't fully understand the batteries and how it all works. But I am learning, and I'm learning fast now, I would say. I think having had the boat, I'm going around different aspects of it and learning a bit in chunks. So the batteries, none of the 4 batteries were actually proper leisure batteries. They were all starter batteries. They all had a CCA rating, which is what you get on a starter battery, which is used to start your engine. So I had 4 batteries of 2 different makes and 2 different amperages. The 2 Lion ones were 100 amps and the 2 Hankooks were 110. Now, one thing I do know is that when you replace your batteries, you replace them all at the same time, the same make and the same ampage. Now, I was told it's not a good idea to have the batteries separated and they should all be in the engine bay. And about a year ago they were all put together in the engine bay. I had been told by another boater that they were the wrong batteries, but I hadn't actually done anything about changing them. But obviously time has gone on. I've had the panels installed, the solar panels, whilst they have been charging the batteries during the day, so I'm happy that the solar is working. They haven't been keeping their charge at night. Excuse me. So what have I decided to do? I've had a lot of advice from you. Various options have been suggested. 6-volt batteries seemed in one sense to be perhaps a good option, but the 6-volt batteries are much taller and they have to be topped up. The space that I have for fitting the batteries wouldn't have been adequate. I would never have been able to top them up. So 6-volt batteries were out of the equation. Lithium ion is often spoken of as the way to go. Lithium ion batteries are meant to have a life of about 20 years. Well, that's all very well, but you're looking at sort of £700–800 per battery. And whilst I might have been able to get away with only 3 batteries instead of 4, I was not keen to spend somewhere between £2,000 and £3,000 on batteries. Then there are lead carbon batteries, gel batteries, AGM batteries, all sorts of batteries. What I've actually decided to do is to stick with lead acid batteries. So I have bought 4 Leoc Adventurer SFL sealed flooded batteries. Now these are rated at 120 amps. So in my mind I thought, that's good, I'm getting a higher ampage from my batteries. But having looked more closely at them, I now realise that for C20, which is 20 hours, they're only rated at 100 amp hours. But at least there's 4 of them, and they're all being replaced at the same time. The other thing is the way the batteries were connected. The batteries were looped together from one battery to the next, to the next, to the next. And although looping is the way to do them, they were not looped as effectively as they could have been. So the chap that has installed the new batteries for me has changed the looping arrangement to make them more effective as they charge and discharge. Now, I expect some of you will want to know a lot more information. It's difficult for me to get in and do a wiring diagram of just how they are wired up, but I did ask that they be wired slightly differently to the way they were wired up, and that has been done. So why did I make the decision to go with the lead acid batteries? The reason really is cost in one sense, but I also think rather than spending more money for batteries that are going to last longer, it may be better to spend less money, have the understanding that those batteries may only last 3 years, 2, 3, 4 years, and replace them more frequently. In that way you are getting brand new batteries periodically. And I can set up a fund to budget for that. And I think for me that is a better way to go, rather than spending out a big lump of money in one hit. So I've made my choice, and having spoken to other moorers in the marina, many of them do the same. They stick with the lead acid batteries. They'd rather have the newer batteries every few years than have longer life batteries, which cost more at the outset. So that's what I've done. Now, I haven't actually tested them yet. I've still been in the marina. The day after the batteries were installed, I went away to visit some relatives, as you're going to see some of that, or you already have seen it, I'm not quite sure. But I did go away to visit some relatives, so I've not been out on the boat since. Now I could test them in the marina just by unplugging the electric and using the inverter and that sort of thing, but I would rather test them out in the proper environment of the cut. I think that is the way to do it. I may change my mind and do an overnight test in the marina, but I'm hoping that in the next few days I will get out on the boat. I've got a commitment coming up at Watford Locks where, as you know, I volunteer, so I won't be going out before that. But hopefully I will get out and give them a test, and I will report further. So that's it really on the battery topic. I have changed the batteries and I'm now very keen to see how they work. And I will of course learn about the batteries and how to use them, how they discharge and recharge and so forth. It will be a new experience for me, which is what I'm looking forward to. I'm gaining knowledge all the time, and that I think is very important. I should mention that the batteries are now sat on 20mm dense foam. Previously they were just sat on the steel. I have been told the batteries should not be sat directly on the steel. There should be some form of insulation underneath them. So I've bought some very dense foam, and all 4 batteries are sat on that foam. So that is another sort of improvement over what was there before. So here I am ready for a cruise. I'm not going far. The idea is just to come out and test the batteries. Do an overnight test, or a couple of overnight tests. Because I've had the solar since I think it was June time. And although I'm sure the solar is absolutely fine, it has been charging batteries which are pretty naff and weren't even the correct batteries to start with. Well, today is the 3rd of November. I came out of the marina yesterday for a short cruise in order to test the batteries before lockdown on the 5th of November. So I have to be back in the marina on the 4th, which is tomorrow. So, how did the batteries fare yesterday when I moored up? Well, I always take some notes and I record them on my phone. So I left the marina at about 12:15 yesterday and I moored up just after 2 o'clock. It was a slow trip because it was so very, very windy. Well, I knew it was windy, but I did struggle handling the boat, I have to say. So I moored at just after 2 o'clock. The batteries at that point in time on the voltage were showing 13.3. Now when the batteries are charging, they will tend to show something between 13.5 and 14.5. And when you stop charging the batteries, they gradually make their way down to about 12.6 voltage. Now I'm not technical, I've explained this many times before. I'm not teaching you anything, I'm just telling you what my experience has been with my new batteries. So when I moor up after I've been cruising, I have various cameras which I need to charge their batteries. So I'm charging batteries, I'm also using my laptop, I'm copying over the day's video that I've taken on my laptop, putting it into folders on the laptop. So there is quite a lot of activity using the voltage. So let me see what I've recorded here. So about 2:10 I started charging my cameras and the voltage was showing 13. At 3:15 it was down to 12.5, and I was still downloading stuff onto the laptop. And then through the day I've got so many different times recorded on here, but later on about 5:30 I put the television on. So from 12.5 it dropped to 12.4 half an hour later, then another half an hour later it was back up to 12.5, and it stayed at 12.5 until 20 to 7 when I spotted it was 12.4. At 7:30 I took part in a Zoom meeting which lasted for about an hour and a half and it was still at 12.4. At 9 o'clock it was 12.2. At 9:30 it was 12.3, so it had gone up again. Then a bit later, at 11:15, it was 12.2. Then gone midnight, it was 12.2. I finally turned the TV and laptop off at midnight, and guess what? It was 12.3. The fridge cut in, it dropped down to 12.2. I switched off the inverter. I've got a 1 kilowatt inverter which had been running, and it went up to 12.4. And this morning when I woke up and I looked at it at 5 minutes to 8, it was at 12.3. So I think that is a very, very clear indication that the batteries have made a tremendous difference, because previously when I've cruised I can be down to sort of 10.6, 10.5 by about 10:30, and I start switching things off. And this has lasted all through the night. Obviously when the compressor in the fridge cuts in, it will draw a little bit more. I've also had the solar panels on. They were doing nothing yesterday because the weather was awful and I wasn't in direct sunlight, but they have been working this morning. And about 10:30 they were putting in 2.10 amps, and then half an hour later they were putting in 11.7 amps. So all in all, from what I can tell, everything is fine. So I am absolutely delighted. That's very, very pleasing. What I should say is that when the batteries are not being charged and they're at 12.6, they can go down to about 11.5 before they actually need to be recharged. So I only got down yesterday to 12.2, which means the batteries weren't fully discharged at all. Shortly I'm going to be doing another cruise. I'll only be about an hour and a half. I'm not going to cruise for long, but that will again recharge the batteries through the engine being run. But yeah, absolutely delighted. It's the morning of 4th November, and I just wanted to give you a quick update as to what happened yesterday. I only cruised for about an hour, just over an hour, so the batteries didn't get much of a recharge. I then moored up. The sun was out, so the solar panels were doing their job as best they could. I'm not going to give you lots of facts and figures. I think I probably gave you too many, but basically everything performed just as it did the day before, and at certain points in the day the readings were identical. I actually switched the television on a bit earlier, give it more of a test. The laptop was on all afternoon and evening. And when I went to bed and finally switched off the inverter, the reading was only 0.1 difference. It was, I think it was 12.4. It was 12.4 the night before, and last night it was 12.3. I've got up this morning, very frosty morning, and again all is well. Let me just look at the figures. Today I woke up and it was 12.3 before I put the inverter on. Then it dropped down to about 12.2. So all is good. I am very, very pleased. That's all I can say for now. Cheers. Many thanks for watching. If you haven't yet done so, please do subscribe and click the little bell. All that remains for me to say is keep safe. Take care, look after your friends and families, do the utmost you can to keep yourselves fit and healthy. These difficult times do continue, and there's no end in sight. Presently it seems over here in the UK. Things have been getting worse, which is a great shame. All the best. Bye for now.